Hello, and welcome to the latest special edition of the Sharesify podcast. We're delighted to be joined today by Richard Stone, Chief Executive of the Association of Investment Companies, or AIC. Richard, thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning, James. Good to be with you.
Excellent. Now, to kick things off, can you tell us about the AIC's mission?
Yeah, of course. So the Association of Investment Companies, as you say, or the AIC, is there to try and ensure that investment companies are understood and considered by every investor. That's our mission statement. So it's about making sure that there's an awareness of the structure and of the sector and of the great things it has to offer investors, and we'll probably come on to some of those in a minute, and making sure that when investors are thinking about what to invest their hard-earned pound in, investment trusts form part of that thought process and discussion.
Excellent. And how do you support the actual members and investors, for that matter?
Yeah, so our members are the actual individual investment companies themselves. And so we do a number of things. I mean, I basically boil it down into three things. We support the sector. So that's, regulatory lobbying. It's providing guidance and things to our members who are predominantly the sort of non-exec directors, the boards of those individual companies. We promote the sector. So you'll see quite a lot of us in the media and out and about there. We have a great website, the AIC.co.uk, where people can go for a wealth of information. And then we organise events. And that's a mixture of events both for our members, for the sort of wider financial community, if you like, say brokers, managers, etc., and also for investors, including private investors.
Can I ask, Richard, and you're a former analyst and you're a chartered accountant of many years' experience, and you've got extensive knowledge of public markets because you were a finance director, you were a CEO. So why the AIC? What was it about investment trusts that appealed to you?
Yeah, so before joining the AIC, my principal experience was sort of 14 years with the Share Centre, one of the UK's retail platforms, which we sold to Interactive Investor during the pandemic. And one of the missions of the Share Centre was about democratising access to capital markets and making investment easier, simpler for people, and something that everybody could and arguably should participate in. And I really see and saw investment trusts as a key part of that. So at the Share Centre, we actually took on a number of the books of the old savings schemes that the investment trusts used to run. And so I was kind of familiar with the structure anyway, but also just familiar with what it could do for investors. So whether that's the ability to provide outperformance because of some of the structural advantages the structure has, whether it's giving access to assets and investments that you can't get elsewhere. And certainly retail investors can't readily get access to elsewhere. There's a number of things which really appealed to it, really harking back to that mission of opening up markets and opening up investment for anyone and everyone. And one of the things I say to our members now, I'm at the AIC all the time, is it's about telling the story and getting the story out there to investors, talking about the portfolio, talking about what you're investing in, bringing it to life for people, and making it part of that sort of everyday conversation for people, so that they can understand. The benefits, the structural benefits, can become quite a dry conversation if you're not careful, when you start talking about gearing and income smoothing and those sorts of things. But actually, if you talk about the portfolio, what you're invested in, what you're giving access to, why you're outperforming, why you can outperform, the tools at the board's disposal and the manager's disposal to help enhance performance for the underlying investors, then all of those things, that starts to make it a much more exciting conversation for investors.
Excellent. And can you tell us about your upcoming investment company showcase on the 9th of October? Now, is this event for sort of growth or income focused investors, or both? And how many companies can private investors expect to see on the day?
So it's an event for all investors, I would say. I mean, we can we can talk a little bit about the growth income thing, but I think that's always a slightly false dichotomy, in the sense of you can invest in a growth stock and shave a bit of the capital off to provide yourself with an income, or you can invest in an income stock and reinvest it, give dividends, and you deliver yourself growth. So it becomes a bit of a false dichotomy. But no, the reality is the investment company showcase is there for everybody. It's an event that we put in place. I started up when I joined the AIC. The first one we did did was in 2022. I knew that there was real retail investor appetite from my time at Share for events that gave the retail investor access to the fund manager. I think there's too much of a perception that the fund manager is, access to the fund manager is the sort of preserve of the institutional investor and the person with a lot of money. Actually, that's not true. And in investment trusts in particular, where, they are listed companies, they have an AGM as an investor with just a single share. You can turn up, you can question management, you can talk to the board, you can vote your shares, etc. Your ability to engage and participate in the sort of activity, corporate governance, etc. of the company is far greater than it is with open-ended or other fund type vehicles. So yeah, there's a real appetite amongst retail investors to be given access to the fund manager. So that was the sort of kernel of the idea. And really over the last 4 years, it's grown massively, has huge momentum. So this year there'll be 30 fund managers presenting. We have a keynote in the middle of the day from a major fund manager each year. This year that's Job Curtis, who's the long-serving manager at City of London Investment Trust. They are the trust with the longest track record of annually increasing their dividend. They've done it for 60 years now, every year in absolute terms increasing their dividend. So if you are an income investor and you want a degree of confidence that you're going to get the same income or more next year than you had this year, that is a great testament to that. And then at the end of the day, the keynote at the end of the day is Julia Hoggett, who's the chief executive of the London Stock Exchange. But then in addition to them, we've got who may be talking more about growth and IPOs and the sort of track record of what's going on the London market at the moment. But alongside that, we've got 30 fund managers through the day, a mixture of single speaker and panel sessions, 3 rooms operating together. People can watch it online if they can't come in person. It's held just around the corner from Liverpool Street Station, so it's relatively easy to access for people. We also have on the day an exhibition area, so there'll be just over 20 management groups exhibiting. So if you want to go and talk to them about their range of investment trusts, talk to some of their managers, etc., you can do that on the day as well. So it's a really great day. It's a really good opportunity, and I have the privilege of both introducing the day at the outset, but also comparing some of the panels. And I'm always delighted by the range and depth of questions that fund managers get from retail investors. And quite often that surprises the fund manager, I think, the extent to which retail investors actually do their homework, do know their subject matter, and as a consequence ask detailed and probing questions, often coming from an angle that they don't necessarily get from the institutional shareholders they're talking to. So yeah, it's a really good day, and it's a real pleasure to be able to bring together the fund managers with that retail audience.
Yeah, James and I'm sure will make every effort to be there. So just to repeat for everybody, that is on Friday, the 9th of October in the city. Full details of how to book tickets are on the AIC's website, which is theaic.co.uk.
Yeah.
So
it's very simple. If you go to the events tab at the top, you don't need to log in or anything. Just click the events tab, and the first thing that will come up will be the investment company showcase. You can click through and book your place there.
Yeah, and there's tons going on, as Richard has said, because I've been looking at it this morning. Now, James, as I say, James and I will be there because we're huge fans of investment trust. But there is an old adage that they tend to be bought, not sold. So how can you increase the appeal? Because if you think private investors have been, I suppose, a bit spoilt with these very low-cost ETFs that keep coming out, and now active ETFs and so on. Have you got any campaigns going at the moment?
Yeah, so I think when I joined Share, one of the first things the chair at the time, City Grandee called Sir Martin Jacob, who was chair of the company, fantastic gentleman, and he said to me, "What you have to remember, Richard, is funds are bought and shares are sold." And I guess investment trusts to some extent fall into that sort of equities shares bracket in that conversation. And it's true, people want to go and own a bit of SpaceX, or they want to go and own a bit of Marks and Spencer's, or whatever it happens to be, and they go and buy it in a way that they don't buy a fund, the fund tends to be sold to them. So I go back to what I said earlier. For investment trusts, it's about bringing their stories to life. It's about talking about what's in the portfolio, highlighting to people the great companies that the investment trusts are investing in, what they're offering to the investor, what their particular edge is or their investment thesis, and encouraging people to then want to buy a piece of that, want to buy into that story or that thesis. So yeah, I think that's the essence of what we as a sector have to do, is to bring that to life for people. And it's not just about um, private assets or unlisted companies or those tech startups and things like that, which yes, some of our members do give access to that investors can't get access to elsewhere. And clearly SpaceX has been the sort of doyen of that in recent weeks and months. But it's also just a typical long only equity portfolio. What are you investing in? What's your ability to go slightly further down the liquidity spectrum into the smaller caps, to add a little bit of spice to that, to go into other markets, etc. So it's that too. And actually, when you look at the data, and we put a press release out, again, you'll be able to find it on our website, but of comparing the performance of investment trusts against their sister funds. So this is where you have an open-ended fund and an investment trust managed by the same manager to the same mandate. In the majority of cases, I think it was 77% over 10 years, the investment trust outperforms, and it outperforms because of the structural advantages that the structure has in terms of its ability to gear, to go slightly further down the capital spectrum, to smooth its income, etc. So there's all of those advantages actually do, the data demonstrates, deliver better performance if you invest in like for like with a different vehicle. So yeah, we need to get all of those messages across. Now, the AIC, as I said, one of our lines of activity, if you like, one of the things we do is promote the sector. There is a big move now to try and encourage people to invest more. We've seen changes to the cash ISA rules. We've seen the launch of the sort of national retail get investing type campaign, Take the Next Step Invest, which we've been sort of strong supporters of. And as we go into 2027, you'll see the AIC doing more as well to promote investment trusts, promote the sector, encourage awareness, encourage more people to search. I think you've got to understand, particularly the next generation of investors is finding their investments and finding their investment recommendations and things through other means, whether that's through AI search and those sorts of things. So making sure that we're positioned as a sector to respond to that and encouraging people to search for us. So yes, you will see more of that going on. And then ultimately, it's down to the companies, as I say, to bring their portfolios to life and make people want to buy them, so that they're in that bought not sold category.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was also going to ask Richard, what impact have activists had on the sector, and perhaps how has the AIC lobbied to protect investors' interests?
Yeah, so activists is an interesting one. I mean, we've obviously seen discounts widen in the sector. So that's the difference between the share price and the net asset value over recent years. I mean, they particularly went out sort of 22, 23 as interest rates rose quite sharply. And where that discount widens, that opens up an opportunity for activists to come in and seek to narrow. They're a normal part of market activity. I think what the difference we've seen this time around is there have been one or two activists in particular who've had a slightly more self-interested approach and have been seeking to take over the control of the board and or control of the asset management contract, so they can get the management fee and things as well. So there's a benefit that accrues specifically to them that other investors don't necessarily have access to, potentially changing the mandate of the fund, etc. So that's really where we've been trying to focus our lobbying efforts to make sure that somebody with a 20-30% stake in a company, and they can't go above 30% without making an offer, obviously in the UK, but 20 to 30% stake, can't exercise such undue influence as to actually take control of the fund and manage it, change its mandate, etc., in a way that other shareholders might not want to happen. So if really just trying to close that loophole where there's a potential conflict of interest with a major shareholder who also happens to be an asset manager or wants to be the asset manager. So that's where our activities focus. I mean, I think just broadening the conversation out to activism more generally, as I said, activists are a key part of any functioning market. If you take a step back, what they're actually doing is identifying economic opportunity. They're effectively saying, look, in the market, there's a mispricing here. This thing is undervalued relative to the value of the assets it's invested in, and therefore, potentially they're acting as a little bit of a canary for other investors to sort of say, look, actually, there's an opportunity over here. Maybe you should be looking at this too. Whether that then results in more share buyback activity, which we've seen, more tender offers, some continuation votes, those sorts of things to help narrow those discounts and close that gap for the benefit of all investors, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, that's great, Richard. Thank you very much. That's a very interesting take as well. So thanks again, as I say, very much for coming on the show, and we're very much looking forward to seeing you in October.
Thank you.
Might be picking your brains on comparing, as we've got our own wealth and retirement show a month later.
You have, and I'm very much looking forward to being on your income panel, I think, in the afternoon. So
absolutely.
Very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to seeing you on that. That's another all-day event in the city. It's on Friday, the 6th of November. Details are on the Sharesify website, and if you pop in the code podcast in block capitals, you'll get 50% off a ticket, but only for a limited time because tickets are selling out. And with that, Richard, thanks again, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you very much, Ian and James.
Thanks,
Good
Richard.
to speak to you.